Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on a Wednesday evening. Thankfully, it's cooler today. Now, I've got a lovely gentleman here called Peter Humphreys today, who's sitting next door to me here virtually. And me and Peter were going to actually talk yesterday on the Tuesday, which should have been the hottest day in the year in the United Kingdom. Would have been a good idea, that, Peter, really, would it?
We would have melted.
Yesterday. Yeah, we would have literally melted, and it was just, I said to Peter, no, let's talk Wednesday instead. Now, I first met Peter relatively recently for his wonderful podcast, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, First Impressions. And this is quite funny, because me and Amanda, my wife, both read it at the same time. And we both, I think, did we contact you separately, Peter, or was it just me? I can't remember now.
I'm not sure I was in touch with you, but I think for on the podcast side of things, I was keen to hear from both of you on, have you both as guests on the pod.
Yeah, I thought I've got the feeling we might have done it separate. I only realised afterwards.
Okay. Well, there was that connection because I think Amanda had featured my book on one of the pods.
She featured you ages ago, didn't she? On reading about extracts. And then I'm pretty sure she reviewed it on Reading in Bed as well. I know she really enjoyed it. I remember telling me at the time. So anyway, Peter, listen, we're here to talk about you today, not me and Amanda. So now, obviously, for people who don't know you then, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself as a person and where all your creativity originally came from. And we'll start from there.
Sure. Well, I'm an editor, a writer and a podcaster. I'm up in Lancaster now. Originally from the Wirral. I spent a lot of time in Manchester and then overseas in the US and Hong Kong. And then I've now settled in Lancaster with my wife and the cat. And so every writer's got to have a cat. And so I've kind of had a sort of up and down journey. I think, I've always been into writing. My focus has varied. I think like a lot of us in my 20s, I was collecting material / having a good time. And then,
so subtle that way you said that.
Many smoky pubs and clubs in Manchester. And then, just getting to the end of my 20s, I just had got it in my head that I wanted to write a book before I was 30. And that coincided with learning about the creative writing masters at Man Met. Reading an article about that in City Life, linked to Gwendolyn Riley, who'd gone through the course and was having some success. But I just thought, well, I can do the novel, but I'll have some structure and I'll learn some stuff. And through that also made lifelong friends, other writers, and we've kind of formed a support network, like I know you have with your, with your writer friends, and that's become very important. So that's how it started, and then it's kind of rolled on from there. I had time in Manchester, time overseas, and it took until 2019 before my first novel was published, not that original novel I'd done in the early 2000s, and that was Hong Kong Rocks, based on my time spent over there.
Yeah, well, should we talk about Hong Kong Rocks to start off with? And definitely, because I know, obviously, I've not actually read it, and Amanda's read it, and she loved it. She did. Now, obviously, there's a really good article about this on the unstoppableauthor.com, and I think this tells a lot about the book, really. So that's why. So tell us then about, first of all, then, where the idea of Hong Kong Rocks came from.
Well, I found myself inadvertently living through fairly momentous times in Hong Kong with the Occupy movement in 2014, and a lot of the the changes sort of politically there, which were obviously affecting the people. And I was lucky enough to have a diverse group of friends, and the book's actually told from a variety of viewpoints: expat, Hong Kongese, male and female, and it was really looking at the changes which were coming from China, really asserting its own rules and laws in Hong Kong, how that was affecting my friends and colleagues and contacts there. And I just thought there was a lot to write about from that point of view. But my style is generally, so I guess it would be sort of a literary fiction, but with thriller aspects and comedic aspects as well. So it's not any kind of straight up retelling of what happened. It's a fictionalized version of that with a deeply unreliable narrator telling that story, and the kind of adventures him and the other characters get up to with this, huge shift in the environment of Hong Kong happening all around them.
Brilliant. Now, obviously, like I know you said before, so this wasn't the first book you wrote; it's the first one you've had published.
Mm-hmm.
Now, over this book, then obviously, I know you were a finalist on a big prize on this one, weren't you, as well? Which happened before, obviously, the book got published. Tell us about that, then.
Yeah, well, in Hong Kong, I was actually in the writers' circle over there, which, again was writers writing in English, but expats and Hong Kongese and Chinese writers as well. And I'd co-edited a couple of fiction anthologies over there, short story collections, and had my own work featured in those as well. And they were published by the writers' circle. So I was quite engaged in the writing scene over there. And through that, I learned about the Proverse Prize, which is an international literary prize, and entered in 2018. Went over with my wife, Anita, to the awards ceremony, got dressed up, and it didn't win the prize. But what Proverse do is every year they will tend to publish 2 or 3 of the finalists for the prize. And fortunately, they decided to publish Hong Kong Rocks. Had to change the name. It was the Islands of Hong Kong originally, but they were worried.
Hong Kong Rocks is definitely better, yeah.
Well, it took me a while because they just thought Islands of Hong Kong sounded like a sort of, book on the geology or something. It sounded like a non-fiction title. So they were like, change it to this, and went through the whole editing process, which was another eye opener. And then ultimately it was published in 2019, launched. Had a UK launch over here just before the pandemic, really, February 2020. It was released, and then I had plans to kind of promote it more, and hence I'm still kind of promoting it now a couple of years on. Yeah, that's the story of it essentially. So I was really happy they had, faith in me and decided to run with it. And yeah, it's been a really interesting and nice experience to have a book out there in that way.
Yeah, completely. Now, obviously, I know you've bought another book out since then, which you've done self-published, haven't you? So now, and I'm going to try and get this right now. I called it the wrong title for, and that's where dyslexia kicked in. Oblivious.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, was it Oblivious? You said it was called, and not obvious.
Yeah, it's oblivious. It's oblivious. That's
another. Perks of being dyslexic. I'm not sure I said obvious before, and I knew you told me corrected me. So, but I said, but tell us about what made you want to go with that book being self-published. Then.
Well, I that it had me as well, because I was thinking back to them, because that also was called something different originally. That was Altered State, and then I found out that was a movie. But it's yeah, that was a sort of experiment in a sci-fi take on Hong Kong and China, and that relationship they have, which I guess, amongst other, comparisons you could use, it's like Big Brother and Little Brother, and and this was really about rival states in a kind of dystopian future. But I took a lot of influence from, again, what was happening in Hong Kong, and revisited it fairly recently to re-edit it. It's a kind of, it's a sort of a road movie, a fantasy with a sort of odd collection of characters who are brought together by a dramatically changing world. So it satisfied my kind of my sci-fi tendencies. I'd say I've got quite a lot of different influences, and it had a little bit. Originally, I sent it off to agents and publishers. I think Galant's, I did hear back from them, and they liked some of it. It opens with a slightly unfortunate sex scene, which for some reason I decided was essential. So they weren't too keen on that, but they, and I think they'd published Orwell back in the day. I was disappointed they didn't want to take it on, but I still saw some, merit in that. So I tweaked it, including that first scene, and that's available on lulu.com as as a self-published effort now. I mean, I think something really nice about that, doing self-published projects as well, is you can look to create your own artwork, create your own packaging for it, and that was the cover was actually done by my wife Anita, who's an illustrator and animator, and she did a fantastic job of that. So yeah, it's nice to have that in print. And who's to say I might sort of revisit it, retweak it in future. But like a few of my previous books, it didn't quite connect with agents and publishers. But of course, that's the that's the game we're in, and you've just got to find someone to to fall in love with your book, and that's quite a challenge with so much great writing out there.
Oh God, yeah, completely. There's so much competition nowadays. I think in
Mm.
some ways a dwindling market, definitely. Like it was, I've done a number of poetry collections myself, and the second, third, and fourth one all were interested by publishers, and for one reason or another, I didn't go ahead with the deal. Various reasons why. So
Okay.
yeah, but I know what you mean with that. Is and then like it's sometimes you think the DIY approach. I think do it yourself. Or your
Yeah.
case is do it your set, do it between the pair of you, because Amanda does a lot of my covers. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why. So I think it's sometimes you prefer the self control, don't you? So
Yeah,
that's why. So
it's great to have that, and if you've got an ally, who happens to be a partner as well, who's going to help with that, that just that helps all the more. So, and it's yeah, it's very difficult because you'll have had the similar experiences to me of like sort of publisher or agents really seeming to like your work, and then for one reason or another, suddenly the emails dry up, and and obviously they're looking at it from a very commercial point of view often. And there may be things that in your work that aren't that don't quite tick those boxes. So it's tricky, and it's nice to be able to get stuff out there and maybe combine that with other stuff that is published more conventionally. I think that's a nice route to go.
yeah, I do think there is scope for it nowadays more and more. So obviously, like you said, with obviously Amazon doing what they do, and Lulu, and I know Amanda uses Drafted Digital as well. She does, and
Oh, right,
I've got a
okay.
few books out in Smashwords in split books to do with like a friend of mine, because a friend of mine does me well, we do 1 to 2 years. Last 2 years it hasn't been a bit more prolific where we do split anti-war books.
Oh,
And
right,
we've done
yes.
6 of them so far in 11 years. So it's like
Wow.
that's obviously soon they had all the problems with Ukraine last year and obviously Afghanistan last year as well. That's we've just upped the ante at that one, but
Yeah,
that's doing a day.
yeah, I mean, I was intrigued by that. I saw a social media post about that recently. I hadn't been aware you were doing that. So that's poetry, is it?
Yeah.
Anti-war
My
poetry.
side's poetry, Nick's, well, it should be poetry. Sometimes he's a lot more freeform than I am. So
Okay.
sometimes it's a little bit different, but nicely so. But it's just, it is what it is, because I'm not taught, I'm not going into politics on it. I'm just telling the
Mhm.
stories. I can have
Sure.
a research and making them poetry with no comments about who's wrong, who's right, because
Okay.
I want people to see the stories, what's happening. So, but
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
listen, we'll talk about me there. Back to you right now. I want to go on to the next thing piece about you as well, is about your podcast, how we first got
Mhm.
talking, your obviously your
Mm.
podcast itself, first impressions.
Mhm.
Now, which I know you started, well, probably I think it was last year, but I think it was about a year or so ago, maybe a little bit more actually. Now, tell us obviously what made you want to do a podcast.
Well, it was actually if I remember right, it was in 2020 during the lockdown,
Hmm.
probably towards the end of that year, I think. And as mentioned, I'd sort of been focused, I was kind of, I'm someone who quite enjoys readings, and I was looking forward to having, getting the book out there and doing bits and bobs in Manchester and where have you. But as it turned out, the lockdown just gave me an opportunity. I think I'd always, I've been enjoying podcasts for a few years, and did have it in mind to perhaps attempt one. And I think in lockdown, it was the motivation really was sort of just to spread a bit of humor,
Hmm.
whether my impressions and silly musical ditties count as humor or not. I'll leave that for other people to decide. But how it turned out was, I'd kind of, put those together with interviews with, people who were doing interesting creative projects, whether they were writers or musicians. Yeah, just to have a kind of in-depth chat with them, and record that. And I found, that was something I enjoyed. Like as we were saying before, we both like to chat, and I just kind of, you know, the challenge was editing it down quite often. Then also I kind of did another podcast later on called Monkey Scribbling, and that was with a friend who's unfortunately, you know, had found out he was pretty ill, and what was great, I think, about the podcasting was I was able to kind of use the skills I'd learned doing first impressions and put that into Monkey Scribbling. And that was based on us just simply reading our old letters from university days to each other. And
Oh, that's brilliant.
so I kind of, I'm putting in music from the time, you know, kind of recreating a bit of that early 90s stuff, which was pre-tech, and going over old times. And we just recorded that in the summer house I've got out back here.
Fantastic, fantastic.
So that was another way, because First Impressions is kind of, you know, yeah, quite, you know, fairly tightly sort of edited and produced and stuff. And the chats with my mate Rich were more of a ramble, but, you know, again, it was, you know, it's just good. It's good.
Oh, rambling rules, right? So
rambling
I'm always
rules.
a believer, definitely that one. Oh, brilliant. So, and also then, tell us about then how your approach has changed with First Impressions then, since you first started doing it.
Well, I don't know. I would say, yeah, I've kind of, I suppose at first I was looking also as, you know, as a way of promoting my work, and I would still love to do like an audio book of Hong Kong Rocks when I've got the time. But then I think very quickly, you know, the focus changed to other people who intrigued me, and you know, I think that started off with Garth Simmons, fantastic writer based in Manchester, and we'd never met, but he reached out over Instagram. I think I'd put a shout out saying, you know, anyone like to appear on the pod, you know, and he signed up, and that was just really interesting. And, you know, as with yourself, we've become friends through the podcast, and you know, done some collaborations together since then. But yeah, I found that really fascinating. And then similarly with, you know, with yourself and Amanda, it was, you know, it's just a time when I think it's important to, you know, look towards indie publishing and DIY, you know, stuff, because there's such interesting things there, rather than always looking towards the mainstream or the big publishers or what's trendy now and trying to second guess, you know, what might be publishable. I found it much more enjoyable to connect with, you know, with other writers who are in a similar, you know, position, and you know, just want to get their work out there, and who are often, you know, really good people as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's doing what we're doing, because there's big similarity, I think, in the sense of we're both operating on like a ground roots level. And it's
exactly.
like, I'm obviously, when I first started doing this, it's common knowledge. I remember Amanda telling me at the time, she thought I'd not talk to people, running out people to talk to after 18 months. 6.5 years later, new. Like, I've ended up like, you meet a lot of friends on people, like people you may have only met once. We would have met in person once, and then we talked a couple of times. But yeah, we connect people immediately. I've just formed a new band actually, and we're a young lady from Huddersfield, and I'll tell you about off mic in a bit. I'm going to put her in contact with you. She's fantastic, one of the best poets I've come across. And it was like, we met through Spoken Label, and it was like, you connect to people sometimes in ways you don't expect, I think. So
yeah, that's brilliant. And it just, you know, and that network spreads, doesn't it? You know, that's really cool.
Yeah, I met on Speakeasy last month. Obviously, then I co-run Amanda and Steve on Open Mic Night. One of your big friends, Maria Roberts, as well. So obviously, you unfortunately were down for Speakeasy last month, but you got the dreaded COVID, unfortunately.
Finally got it.
It caught you. And then we met Maria then, who you booked in for, and Maria was lovely. Oh, unbelievable storyteller. That's why. So, but last night, did you know? I'm guessing you knew Maria for First Impressions, didn't you?
Well, no, I knew Maria actually from the Masters, so we go way back. It's Maria and another really close friend, Zoe Lambert. We met.
You know Zoe did. Oh, blimey, yeah. So Zoe taught me at uni. She did. Oh, blimey, that was a while ago.
Oh gosh, right. Wow. Well, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? We're all connected. I mean, they were two. You know, Zoe had studied at East Anglia, and when we finished, me and Maria were both at Mum and then we just continued the workshopping with me, Maria, and Zoe, and we've done it off and on, you know, until recently. You know, we've been doing it sort of last year and stuff, looking at each other's work, and, you know, being supportive and frank about it. So yeah, so Maria's a very old friend, going back to those days, and
Oh wow.
and I think
Oh wow.
if you're friends with someone and you're writers over that length of time, you see the ups and downs, the inevitable ups and downs we all
Oh,
have,
completely. Yeah,
and
completely.
you're there to support.
Yeah,
And
I've got a few writer friends that date about way 20 years. 25 years, some cases.
yeah,
And the fun one before was, and I've not told you about this as well, I was on your First Impressions website before, actually.
oh
And I
yeah,
was looking at your current recent reading, and the one that you wouldn't realise
oh,
was Squid Squad by Matthew Welton, published by
oh
Cartanet
yes,
Press.
yes.
Matthew Welton may deny this now, but he was my teacher at Bolton University.
Ah, right, okay, right.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So I know. Well, I'm not
Ah,
going to embarrass him in that one, so we'll move on. But that's why.
oh,
So
a lovely guy, a lovely guy. I got, knew him a little bit a long time ago now, but he was one of your teachers
yeah,
when you were.
taught me poetry in second and third year at Bolton University. That's why, and
Oh
I thought, wow,
gosh.
that's why. So that, like I said, he may deny teaching me now because I was a bit of a rebel. Definitely not a rebel, more rebel than a clue, not a cause. Definitely so back then. But anyway, Peter, obviously, we're going to start winding down. I only want you to get to do a bit of reading for us in the second half. Now,
Sure.
I want to ask you about, obviously, start winding down now. Obviously, I know First Impressions will be carrying on as an ongoing series. People are wondering, won't it? So
Sure. Yeah.
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 Now, I know you don't do it as regular spoken label, but you do it every couple of weeks, really, don't you? You told me before, so usually, don't you? So
With the podcast, when I can, yeah, I'm working on a new novel now, and a short story collection, which, South American tales, actually, because I've spent a bit of
oh yeah,
time over there with Anita. So the podcast is sort of, I find it quite addictive, and I love it, and I love coming up with the music, and and trialing my strange impressions and so on. But I have to remind myself that, I've been working on this novel for a couple of years now, so I'm just looking towards getting that finished, getting in touch with agents and publishers and the usual, and also, but the nice thing is I'll look for a, I'll look for an agent once again. The quest goes on for that, but then the stories I'm doing with Anita, she's going to illustrate, and we'll probably release that as a kind of limited edition, illustrated book. So the podcast sometimes has to, it has to work around those a little bit at the moment. But I've got a couple of guests lined up for after the summer.
good.
And I think I'm hoping, David Gaffney, again, sort of local
Oh
motion
yeah.
I'm hoping.
Amanda's had dealing with David Gaffney before. I've not
Okay.
met him. I know the name certainly. So I'm brilliant.
Just yeah, he's a great writer. So yeah, there will be, some more guests lined up. Probably be after the summer now, and by then hopefully I'll have finished the first draft of Adrift, which is
Brilliant.
the new book. I mean, I say first draft, it's never a first draft, it's about the third or fourth, but
Usually
the
is. Usually
the
is.
first full one that I'll hopefully be happy with. And
Brilliant.
so that's the
Yeah.
plan.
Now, what's the plan? Obviously, with Anita, obviously doing is an illustrated novel for you then, because obviously that's quite a different approach to doing as a straight novel, isn't it? Then for yourself.
Well, she'll actually do. It's a collection of short stories. So there's
Oh,
only
novel, the short story. Sorry, my fault. Yeah.
yeah, no worries. I mean, they're quite long. There'll only be like 4 or 5 of them. But yeah, she's sort of looking at the moment to decide what kind of, obviously she's got a lot of options open in terms of how she might want to bring that to life through her artwork. But I've got total faith in her. She's a total genius with all of that. So I'm kind of handing it over to her. And of course, because the stories are set in Argentina and Uruguay, she's also having to do a little check through, because I'll have inserted bits of Spanish in there. I'll have, there'll be bits of geography and history of the time, and so she might pick me up on a few things and go, actually, you need an accent here, or she'll tell me if something is realistic or not. But one of those stories is Justice, which was long listed for the BBC Short Story Award.
Yeah, I did see that
year,
listed. Brilliant.
last year,
Brilliant.
which was which was lovely, and but then I think I've sent that round to a few publishers and no one's picked it up. So again, I just thought, well, I'll get that out there, and and I'll also get it out there with, you know, with some of Anita's work attached to it, which will make it extra special.
No, I'll do it, man. Definitely. And it sounds a great idea. So good luck with it. Definitely. Do you have any sort of idea when you'd be looking? Obviously, if you have to go down a self-published route, this won't be this year. This will be next year minimum, won't it? I'm guessing.
It'd be next year. Yeah. So the stories are pretty much done. And you know, Anita will, you know, she'll have a summer break now, so she'll be working on the illustrations. But yeah, you know, we won't rush that out. I mean, it'll be, we'll wait till we're happy with it. And as I say, you know, we're looking at a few different printers, and we just want to make it, you know, really nice looking, and you know, a bit of a kind of yeah, it's kind of a testament to what, you know, our travels over there, in the same way as Hong Kong Rocks is a bit of a love letter to, you know, my old home. So yeah, so we want to make something really nice. It'll probably be next year for that.
No, fingers crossed. Well, when that's obviously ready, we'll love to bring you back on here, and we'll definitely try and persuade you to bring Anita on as well. So I'd love to talk to her about
yeah,
the creative process in it. And if I could do that, I'll probably bring Amanda on board as well, so she can ask you all her piercing questions about your book and stuff. So
that would be brilliant. Oh,
yeah, I'd love to do it. Well, I'll have a talk about that. Definitely, that'd be great fun. So now, obviously, Peter, if people want to get hold of your books, and we know obviously Oblivious is obviously available on lulu.com. I'm guessing obviously Hong Kong Rocks is available. I know I've seen it on Amazon, but it's available on the usual places otherwise, I'm presuming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if people don't want to use Amazon, I think it's on bookshop.org, and it's Proverse work with the Chinese University of Hong Kong, so it's available through them as well. So yeah, in one of those places, and you know, with Amazon, you've got it as an ebook as well.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with the next book, Peter, and I'd love to hope to bring you back on again,
Andy.
mate. So, right, we're going to take a quick break now, guys and girls, and we're going to get Peter to do a couple of pieces in the second half here. So, and big gratefulness today, mate. So, how does it feel for you, Peter, been on the other side of it after interviewing me a couple months ago?
Different, very nice. Yeah. You know, I don't have my prompts or my script, so I'm just freestyling. So I hope it's okay.
story of my life, that really. I always freestyle these. I'll often have people wondering the history of spoken language. I often make sure I know what I'm going to talk about, but I don't have but I try not to keep off the questions. So that's why to keep it, you say, because freestyle the best we can. So guys, I know we'll let Peter go and get composed. We'll see you all in 2 minutes.